I call Scott Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, that member started off her speech, and in fairness, most of it was pretty good, apart from the last couple of minutes when she flew off into a rage and a tirade about some flight of fancy about what she may think that is going to occur in other parts of the country. But, sir, it's a pleasure to rise in support of these two bills and to follow the Minister, Nick Smith, who I thought gave a very good address and a comprehensive history of why it is that we are debating these two bills in the second reading of the House this afternoon. Sir, back in 1878, when the original enabling legislation that set up the Riccarton Racecourse was put through the Parliament of New Zealand, the area that was designated as reserved land for the racecourse, of course, was way out in the boondocks. It was a long, long way from what was then Christchurch City, and as the Minister said in his speech, if you go back to the Hansard reports of the original debate, you'll find that there was some scepticism about how successful this park of racetrack would be, because it was so far away from the city. Well, of course, in the 100 or more years that have ensued since the original legislation was passed and the reserve was put in place, of course, the city has expanded and it's built itself around what now is a very important part of the Riccarton suburb and, of course, the entire Christchurch city makeup. It's a very important part of the city. And, sir, so these two bills actually are a combination of legislation that will mean that the racing club can move forward in terms of providing some real estate for the regrowth, the regeneration of Christchurch in a meaningful way, and I'm very supportive of that. Sir, the Select Committee was fortunate enough to be able to travel to Christchurch and actually hear the two submissions that we received that wanted to be heard in person, actually at the Riccarton Racecourse. And I have to say, I had not visited the racecourse previously, so for me as a non-Cantabrian, it was a real treat and a privilege and a pleasure to actually visit the site and to go there and see the beautifully manicured grounds, the lovely racecourse, and of course the big extensive area that makes up the racecourse. And so of the 120 odd hectares, which is a very large footprint, I have to say, for a racecourse, some 82 hectares will remain after this legislation has gone through and after the nearly 600 homes that are to be built on the 40 hectares that will be designated for a residential building. That still leaves a very big footprint, sir, and I got a sense from hearing these submissions and from touring and visiting the site just how important it is to the people of Riccarton and Canterbury that site be maintained in a way that is accessible to the public, that is important for the maintenance of the fine racing tradition that occurs in Canterbury. And I guess that I got a sense of how that balance could be achieved. One of the things that I think is particularly important, sir, is that of the homes that will be built on the 40 hectares that is being designated for residential building, about a minimum, in fact it's a minimum of 180 of those homes are to be affordable. And that means, in terms of a definition, affordable will mean that they will be below the $450,000 Kiwi Start cap that exists in Christchurch. And, sir, I think that's going to be important for part of the regrowth of Christchurch, the regeneration of Christchurch. And the Minister made passing comment about how many homes are needed, how large the city is going to become. And of course, this, sir, is part of a suite of legislation that the Local Government Environment Committee has been considering on a whole range of Canterbury and Christchurch-related issues. And, sir, this is one of the, I guess, if I could put it in terms of being almost a silver lining that came out of the tragic situation that was the Canterbury earthquakes 5 years ago. Because I suspect, sir, had those earthquakes not taken place and the tragedy not occurred, we wouldn't be considering this bill today. Sir, I want to, along with the Minister, acknowledge and thank the Board of Trustees of the Riccarton Racing Club for their support, for their ability to take on board some of the issues that the Select Committee raised. I want to acknowledge Ngāi Tahu Properties, who will be the organisation that manages and oversees the development. I want to thank the local submitters, the people who came to the Select Committee and gave us a very clear steer about their views, both in writing and in person. And I particularly want to thank the officials who worked with the committee on the bill. So this is a good piece of pragmatic legislation. It provides a solution or assistance to the solution of the much needed need for further residential accommodation to be built in Christchurch. And so I have very great pleasure in commending it to the House in second reading.